Hola, hola. Of climate smart food systems and CEO market potential. No? Now we're gone? Yeah, good, good, good. Okay, good morning again. Please. Okay, thank you. Let me welcome you all to this new activity of the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, bridging financial gaps to accelerate the implementation of climate smart food systems and COO market potential for transforming agriculture. First of all, I want to welcome our panelist, Minister of Environment of Costa Rica, Mr. Franz Tattenbach, as well as our colleague from the Central American Bank, Veronica Ruiz. Prior to that, let me give the floor to our Director General, Manuel Otero, who is going to give us some welcome remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this third exciting day of events, to this pavilion, which is, once again, I always repeat, your pavilion, our pavilion. We are the actors of the ecosystem of the agri-food systems of the America. It is a pleasure to begin this panel with the title, the very, very important title, Bridging Financial Gaps to Accelerate Implementation of Climate Smart Food Systems and the CO2 Market Potential for Transforming Agriculture. I want to thank all the sponsors, all the friends of ICA for making possible for third year in a row this pavilion. I would like to recognize the presence of Minister of Environment of Costa Rica. Thank you for your presence. The distinguished members of the panel. Let me just start off underscoring that this is the finance COP, underscoring the importance of enhancing ambition and enabling action, with a particular focus on financial pathways for sustainable development. The President-Designate of this country has outlined three priorities in this area: establishing a new climate finance target, operationalizing carbon markets under Article 6, and finalizing the loss and damage fund to support the most vulnerable. Our panel will examine how to overcome existing barriers, with a particular focus on challenges in the Americas. Among the critical questions we'll explore today are: what regulatory and incentive frameworks can guide consumer and producer decisions towards sustainable food systems? How can multilateral development banks expand their impact, leverage private capital, and deploy new financial tools? In what ways can public budgets and fiscal policy support agriculture transformation while building resilience against economic shocks? How can capital markets and banking systems become more inclusive, particularly for small farmers, small and medium enterprises, women and youth? And finally, how can individual countries align their food systems transformation with nationally determined contributions and adaptation plans? I would like to conclude emphasizing that farmers are ready and committed to be protagonist of a new era. But this is not going to be free. This is not going to be cheap. We need money for adjusting to the new reality. Farmers need to increase revenues, exploring other markets, like, for example, the carbon markets. Yesterday, one of the panelists emphasized that they are farmers, they are not producers, because they are the guardians of rural territories, they are the custodians of the biodiversity. They need enhance the revenue in order to be protagonists of this new time. Thank you to all and enjoy the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Director General Otero. Again, my name is Federico Sancho. I'm the Planning, Monitor, and Evaluation Manager of AICA headquarters in Costa Rica. It's again a great pleasure for me to meet and present to you Minister Tattenbaum from Environment of Costa Rica, our colleague from the BCE, Veronica, and our colleague from the Ministry of Agriculture, Gonzalo Becoña. Minister, let me start with you. I want to ask you, with carbon markets in mind, which are the main challenges in the implementation of a public policy related to carbon volunteer and regulated markets and other finance instruments like payments for environment services and payments for results, which Costa Rica has a great experience ahead?
And thank you, ICA, for having us here in this important event for the agriculture of the Americas. It's very important to be here. I think there's two things. I'm glad that we're talking about agriculture and carbon markets and agriculture and climate change. And I wanna come at it from another angle. I think putting the carbon markets in agriculture right away is putting the cart in front of the oxen, as we say in Costa Rica, because the reality is adaptation to climate change, what we have to be more concerned for two reasons. Costa Rica has a great experience in carbon market, no doubt about it, with the forestry sector. We have sold in the voluntary market, we have sold in the formal market, we have sold in the Red Plus markets. And all of it has been achieved, and I like to say, by two programs. One, the Protected Areas Program of the Ministry of Environment, and the other one, that the farmers of Costa Rica have behaved very well. They stopped deforestation. And by so doing, they produce a lot of avoided deforestation, the growth of the forest, and so this is something we are tying up to. Number one thing that sector markets is attach itself to zero deforestation programs. I think that's one important thing. Now, of course, we also know that there is a lot of interest in soil carbon, reducing emissions from different agricultural techniques, but in that regard, at the prices that we see now, the challenge is how this is going to be an incentive enough to move the needle in the profitability of agriculture. I don't see that at the prices we have now, it is that strong that it can move the needle in terms of changing the profitability, whereas we are facing challenges of adaptation. And I think we need to look for, I've been very happy and we have this discussion a lot in Costa Rica with the Agricultural Ministry. We work together very close now in a program called Sustainable Landscapes. A sustainable landscape is a whole country approach where the country has achieved already zero deforestation. And by the way, the landscape as a whole, all the forest, private, public, farmers, non-farmer forest, and the agriculture, basically is in a steady state of emissions. The forestry part is capturing as much as the agriculture is emitting. We're in a steady state because we have recovered a little bit of forest. So I think the whole thing of, now let's go to voluntary market. So that having said that, I think let's not lose the mind adaptation to climate change. That's number one. Number two, voluntary and non-voluntary markets. Well, the big difference is that in voluntary markets, you have a very easy way out of saying I don't want to adjust my emissions baseline. Whereas if you go to the non-voluntary market, you're going to have to adjust to your emission baseline, and then it's going to be up to the seller, the country selling the emission reductions, to make sure that this project is really creating these reductions because you're giving them away. I mean, there is no double counting under Article 6 or what I have heard that is being negotiated. You basically sell from your national accounting, and then you have a farmer program, maybe environmental service payment program, another type of program, where you hope that this program created those credits additionally that are the ones that you're going to sell, and then you have to make sure they are not in your baseline, that the country did not have this mapped. Because if the country had this mapped, it might be a choice that countries have to make. Do I sell these credits and then don't comply to my Paris Agreement obligations? If I have to transfer these credits or not. So these are real issues that now countries like Costa Rica is facing in these carbon markets. I mean, the transfer of credits. Are they go against the baseline or not? And these are, now on the other hand, if we say CO2 smart agriculture, if we say this is a low emissions agriculture, but putting the emphasis only in the credits, I think it could be maybe dangerous. It could be. I know is what is now available, and I know agriculture is the second sector that emits more. But because of that, we are not going to blame the farmers for emitting in Costa Rica when the whole landscape is already carbon neutral. So we have to balance this out. I mean, well, I'll get back in another question maybe to this topic. The other one is the regulations, the country. The country has to have a regulation whether it's going to allow or don't allow, and when allows the credits to be transferred to another country or not. This is what is critical. And is it done project by project, or is it done otherwise? But sorry I extended myself more or less.
Thank you, Minister, and we appreciate very much the experience of Costa Rica for sure. And this goes along the line of what Ika is saying, that agriculture is part of the solution also. So this is the way ahead for us. Going through the agricultural sector, I want to hear from Gonzalo maybe. What has been the experience with climate finance for agricultural sector in the country, and what has been the main catalyst for concretizing projects in actions from the Uruguay or the southern experience?
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ika, for the invitation to be part of this panel. I want to share the experience in the point of view from Uruguay, and I agree what the minister said that what we are facing a really challenge to find finance to put in practice actions in the field, and just to make a brief context of what is happening in the world. I mean, the agreement of the $100,000 that was agreed in the Paris Agreement, only 4% went to agriculture, and probably less than 2% for adaptation. So most of the funds that you find around the world, it's mainly for mitigation rather than for adaptation. And what we face in our countries is an adaptation problem to climate change. We are countries that we export most of our productions. We need more resilient farmers to go on, continue in the economy, putting the products in the economy, exporting and bringing incomes and earn money for the country. So this is a key point for Uruguay, and that's why, and looking around the world, because of our conditions, now it's very difficult to find grants for our countries, for our type of countries. In Latin America, I think that is the same that faced Costa Rica and some other countries in South America. So in Uruguay, these governments, I mean, this government that is in the last 5 years, we start trying to develop new instruments
to find money, to capture money, to put actions in the field. So we have two different instruments that we work in Uruguay, but most of them are related with our NDC goals. So because anyone that want to finance an action in a country want to be sure that it's part of the strategy of the country to make a climate action. No? So I think that our umbrella for most of this type of finance is the NDC. So the development of the NDCs is a critical point in the countries if we want to achieve finance around the world. That's the first aspect. The second one is how we are going to implement those instruments in the country. So the second point is the institutional agreement. And this is a key issue too, because when you find an instrument, you need to find an agreement between different interests inside the country, because you have an environment minister that want to keep all the environment. You have the economy that want more money, income for those money. And you have the agriculture one that want more production. So I think that long-term policies in this type of aspects and good dialogue between the ministers is really important. This is the second aspect. And the third one is the MRB. The MRB is another critical point, and to have data. Because no one is going to put any coin if you really don't know if you are going to have the return of the achievements of the goals that you promise in a credit or in a loan or whatever, if you want to get the money. So the MRB, the data, is really a critical point. So in our experience, we need to be prepared. I mean, if we want to get money to finance action in the countries, we need to be prepared. And to be prepared means MRB, institutional, and agreements inside the country. So our experience is that we are getting two different type of instruments. One is a loan with the World Bank, with the achievements of the NDCs. So if we have an increased achievements of our goals, they give you a discount in the interest rate of the loan for the country. So what we are using in Uruguay is that money that reducing the interest, we are creating a climate fund where all the money go there, and then we use it in the country in depending in the needs of the country. So, but mainly we are putting the focus in agriculture just to scale up many validated projects that we already practice in Uruguay or we have good results. Now is the time is to scale it, because to find small projects is easy, but the difficulty is when you want to scale up those projects. And most of the time when you want to scale up, you need more finance. And so that means more money for technicians, more money for implementation, for practices, put it in the field. So that's what's one of the good instruments, and I think that for the future, I think that we are in the line of more instruments, and we are facing now how we are going to implement market-based solutions. And when we talk about market-based solutions, the carbon credits is one aspect that we want to go through, but it's quite new for us. I mean, we need to have, as I told you, we need to find agreements inside. So we need to have built some capacities before to go through the carbon credits.
Thank you, Gonzalo. You give us good examples of cross-sectoral, which is really what we're looking for at this panel, right? The relationship between environment and agriculture. The need of new financial mechanisms is indeed something that for us is vital here. So we had with us CABI. So, Veronica, what financing mechanisms on that line along Gonzalo was mentioning can the CABI promote to scale up a small food system in Central America and close any financial gap? What's the experience of Bessie at this point?
Well, good morning. First of all, thank you for the invitation to be part of this event. I will take a couple of time just to introduce what our institution is, just in case some of you don't know about us. We are the Central American Bank for Economic Integration. Actually, we are the biggest, the main, more relevant MDB in the region. We almost have 50% of the regional's multilateral financing. That put us in the peak. The main countries, our founders, is El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica. But we do have beneficiaries as Panama, Belize, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Mexico, Colombia, and Argentina. Uruguay, not yet. So actually, the bank, the name of the bank is get closer, too small for the scope that we have. But yes, we may work in all this project in all these countries. Precisely in the what you were just asking, CABE is leading right now an initiative to strengthen the climate resilience in the Central American integration system region by creating a very good portfolio of climate change related projects. This instrument should give us a big idea of the projects that we could, in this case, finance, which will be will meet international environmental and social standards, and will be ensure that we meet relevant investing criteria of investment institutions such as the GCF, among others. CABE is working for this hand by hand for institutions like in Costa Rica, and we want to have a very strong portfolio of projects that are linked with national designated authorities and regional entities in order to have promote regional integration and sustainable development. We are aware of the climate. Smart agriculture is a fundamental sustainable development for climate resilient in Central America and the Caribbean, a region that we know is very highly vulnerable for the climate change impacts. But we do have very good examples of what we can do in the region that maybe are not that small and are regional, which is very difficult to implement, as you may imagine, when the territory is among more than one country. And that's the dry corridor project that it's the GCF have 80 million of the 268 million that the projects have right now. That is an example that we are heading to the small farmer in these regions. Financing plays a key role for scaling up. We understand the challenges that you're having in your countries. Funds, for that matter, the bank have created its own financial fund, or we call it Climate Change Fund, which is precisely to prepare finance feasible studies, pre-feasible studies, capacity building in order to take and have projects bankable for us. So, and this is non-refundable and fundable resources, more or less 17 million US dollars just to make the objective to have bankable projects. So for the carbon market, we have many things to do yet, but the CABE's vision for market is promoting sustainable projects that reduce emissions. And obviously, we need to still measure what their projects are in emissions and generate carbon credits, especially in sectors like renewable energy, waste management, and forest conservation. The bank have developed the blue bond and green bond. We already issue more than $1 billion in the couple of years past. So we have attracted investment to environment initiatives, and this strengthened the regional capacities to ensure effective participation in this market. So as for CABE, we are committed to continue to develop in big scale this kind of projects with this type of facilities that the bank is creating. And therefore, CABE will continue collaborating with the governments, with the private sector, with international partners, which is very important for the implementation for us, and the private sector as well, so we can finance and promote initiatives and projects that combine agriculture, productivity with climate resilience and environmental protection. Well, our commitment is very clear. We want to have a Central American that is more resilient, sustainable, and inclusive. Well, and for that, we are leveraging the opportunities and the carbon market and multi-sectoral partners, which are of the main partners that we have for implementation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Veronica. So indeed, there are many innovative solutions ahead of us that will probably allow us to envision better the opportunities for carbon markets and its relation with agriculture. I know that the agenda of the minister as well as our panelists are tight. If there is any burning question from the stage, please, I will open up the floor. But before that, if somebody's going to think a question, just to Minister Tattenbach, how to promote better these cross-sectoral partnerships, including the private sector. We have not mentioned the private sector yet. And next to this first session, we're going to share also with small companies making progress in relation to the better use of agriculture and environment. How to promote better that cross-sectorial partnership. We have talked involving the private sector and, of course, local communities. You mentioned farmers. So they are key persons in this equation also.
Sí. Hello, gracias. Farmers, private sector. Farmers are the private sector, but they are a small private sector. And as a consequence, I think that's a big challenge, aggregating. The big challenge that I see is that adaptation to climate change in the agribusiness sector is happening by the big corporations, and the big duty that institutions like ICA, CABE, us, the public officials have is how do we make sure that the climate change doesn't become a more of a unfair transition. The famous fair transition has to do with that. It has to do with the fact that adaptation requires, I call it a very weird kind of financing, because and CABE is doing fantastic things for climate change in the region and in the country. No, it's the most important programs in Costa Rica for adaptation and for resilience and infrastructure are being funded by CABE, and you heard what they're doing in the Corredor Seco in agriculture. So we're safe with CABE. But they have money too. So. But the thing is, the thing with adaptation is that you have, what is your proposal to adaptation to farmers? You have to make it, it's a financial proposition. You have to change your ways, your means, make it resilient. It's a change of technological package. Hopefully, someone tells you, do it this, and on top of that, you will be resilient and you produce some carbon offsets. Well, is it going to be enough to make it attractive? And who has the knowledge for this? You guys have the knowledge. You are the experts in climate change. You have tremendous knowledge, projection models, of how much is it going to impact in the next 5 years, 10 years, it's going to get drier, So all this knowledge, you're asking the farmer to incorporate and take risks, putting its farm in a bank loan, a risk in its ownership, because you say the climate is going to change. So who should assume the risk? And if you don't assume the risk, if someone else, if some concessionary funds are not there for assuming the risk, then you're asking the farmer to make a jump into a knowledge that is very sophisticated. So sophisticated that even some presidents of countries don't believe on it, some of them. I mean, so it is a very sophisticated knowledge. It's super sophisticated knowledge. It's almost, and so to me the challenge of public officials, ICA, institution like that is how do we frame the finance in a way that the proposal is not so weird. My colleague, banker, Veronica, that we have to say, if you invest here, yes, you're going to have to pay back the loan. It's an economic proposal because investing in adaptation pays off. How does it pay off? You're going to be less worse off than you would have been if you didn't do it. I mean, and this is, it's a very, yes. And then you scratch a little bit of carbon to see if the price of carbon is going to make it better. And then you're going to say that you're going to eco-label it as sustainable. So this is a very challenging proposal. And I think we are not doing necessarily yet the job. We need to have some kind of concessionary loans coming to institutions that can frame it, like BESIE or CABE, and having the knowledge of the agriculture that ICA has and systems, because the private sector is adapting to climate change. But that knowledge is kept as proprietary. I mean, there is big agribusiness that knows what they're doing. They have already the varieties, they have the techniques, they have the weather systems, and we're not doing it. So I feel very comfortable in agriculture, like you see, but that's that is the topic. We have a joke in Costa Rica between the Minister of Agriculture and myself. I mean, jokingly, there is a very high-level representative from the Minister of Agriculture back there, Carla, with us, which is a specialist in adaptation. And I always tease with the Minister of Agriculture. He is the one saying that we could exchange roles. Yeah, why don't you give Minister of Environment to me for a while and I can take agriculture? Because he's a very big environmentalist, and so we understand production. But this is really the challenge, and is financing. Carbon markets are just there to maybe make it more palatable and more profitable, or more rentably the transition to a more resilient agriculture. But the proposition needs concessional funds for the small farmers, probably, because the big ones are going to be, what is the profitability proposal of the big agribusiness? That supply is going to go down because climate change is going to erase the non-adapted ones. So we have to be careful, and this to me is a challenge that we're facing. So
I need to answer him. Well, actually, we really know that we have a big challenge to go. And what we have done, although we are very proud of what we've done in Corredor Seco, because we actually going through the small farmer, that it's very difficult. But that's not the work of the bank. Actually, without a partner that really knows how to do that. So in this case, it's FAO. FAO, it's the agency that's really going down to the ground. So we understand the challenges. I know we have many things to do, and the bank is almost by force, have to see the carbon market. And we have to begin measuring it, because as you said, we are not measuring really exactly how much we are reducing in emissions. So we beginning with that, we can then have some credit in the carbon market. So yes, challenge accepted.
Thank you very much. Please. You can pass through a mic, yeah? This should be like the burning question.
Just wondering if the role of insurance in leveraging or expanding access to capital, especially for small farmers. Have you had experience with it, or how would you see it combining with the bank investments?
Thank you. Actually, I forgot to mention that. We had one time a program just for security and guarantees for small farmers. It didn't want that right, and maybe it's because we didn't have the speciality or the knowledge, because exactly we know that the knowledge depends on the crop, depends on where the land is, depends on the country, if it's indigenous or it's not, if it's close to the urban or what is the product. So we had many difficulties and it didn't work. Actually, it didn't work. But we are actually yesterday talking about who do we have to knock the door in order to understand more the field and have better partners and again try to do the security and the warranties for the small farmers. But see, we are thinking of it.
Yeah, no, about the insurance, we have some experience in Uruguay too. But the issue with the insurance is that now with the climate knowledge that we have, the issue is that the farmers took the insurance when they know it is going to be a bad year. So that is not profitable for any insurance company. So that's a key aspect when we talk about the insurance. Need to be a long-term insurance, independence of the year. Otherwise, it's not going to be a good tool. That's our experience in Uruguay. But I want to write something that the minister talk about the typologies of the farmers. The small farmers are the one that they are more vulnerability, have the more vulnerability to this aspect, because the big farmers have the opportunity to invest and they have opportunity to invest in technologies and so on. So I think that the family farms need to be the focus of the vulnerability of those farmers. So we need, I mean, the credits need to focus in family farms, how we can help them, but with a view of what is the opportunity. I mean, we're talking about food security also. We are not going, not talking about, we all know that the population is growing and we need to produce more food to the world. So I mean that the credits need to change the focus and change the focus in the opportunities of producing more food in a sustainable way. No? So that means that we need to join adaptation and co-benefit with mitigation. So we can join it together, because most of the actions that you can put in practice in the field, they have both co-benefits, most of them. So we need to change the focus of what we are looking at. It's not only mitigation. We need to talk about the co-benefits between both.
I just will add nutrition as well.
Thank you very much. The minister's agenda is tight, so I will want to close this first part of the event, thanking very much Minister Tattenbach, Gonzalo, and Veronica. I think the message there are three key messages out of this. First, let's make it simple. I think this is part of the challenge of these kind of discussions. Knowledge is there, so we can share knowledge among ourselves, the cross-sectoral between environment and agriculture, the role of agencies like AICA, like the Central American Bank, other agencies will serve as bridges to sharing that knowledge. And just what Gonzalo said, farmers needs to be the focus. Thank you very much, and please give them a big round of applause, and I can bring over my new invitees here. Thank you very much.
Remember me to give you a new picture.
I know.
Because it's in the home office. Can we have a picture?
Okay, thank you very much again. And we will continue with the second session of this event. As you, from moving from the national and the regional experience, we want to go very grounded towards examining real projects going on in relation with the carbon markets. So you will leave from here with the real experience of what's going on in the field in relation to this. So with me, I have Sofia Ramirez from a Costa Rican company called Gigafex, Luis Diego Mena from Plasma Technology Design, a Costa Rican energy production from organic waste, Mr. Alejandro Martinez from the Catholic Relief Services, and Mariana Ramos from CNA Brazil. Let me just start both with Sofia and Luis Diego. Maybe they can describe a bit their company, what they do, right? And maybe tell us what kind of lessons learned have they draw from real projects trying to use CO2 transactions from energy production and sustainable agriculture. So I don't know who wants to start. Sofia, Luis Diego, please, ladies first. Sofia.
Hi, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. My name is Sofia. I'm co-founder of Gigafex. So at Gigafex, we are sequestering carbon dioxide from the atmosphere by producing biochar. To achieve this, we are using the biomass waste as feedstock for a pyrolysis process where we produce the biochar. So this biochar has a very stable structure where the carbon is stored for a very long time, for hundreds of years. And this biochar also has plenty of benefits for the agriculture. We also generate thermal energy from this pyrolysis process. And what we do differently, because there is a technology already for this, is that this technology is very expensive in the market. So we are developing a very low-cost technology that allow us to scale up. And we also can process with this technology biomass waste that has a high percentage of humidity. Also, biochar has plenty, like I said before, plenty of benefits for the agriculture because it can be used as an organic fertilizer. It has, the biochar we are producing has nutrients, and it also retains the water very well, so because it has a porous structure. And also for the tropical soils, it's very important because it can increase the pH, and tropical soils usually are more acidic. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to be here. I'm the founder of a company called the Greener Group. The Greener Group have 18 years that we start doing first consulting, and now we're focusing since the last 8 to 9 years in waste management. And one of the streams, of the main streams that we have to manage is agricultural waste. And one of the things that we find out is the agriculture is not just the organic stream, it's as well the chemicals and the pesticides and all the materials that have relationship with the agriculture production. So what we're doing right now in this project, a specific project, is to do gasification for this kind of materials and for organic waste as well. So it's very synergic with Sofia's technology, and as well for us it's very important to provide a solution to the country. I'm very passionate about that. So provide a solution to the country, and that solution can be replicable in all the Latin American countries, because we know that there is a real solution that we can use this kind of waste and produce energy with that, and produce an emission reduction with the same process. So our idea is to put it in service like we already do for other industries that manage some other different waste. And with that, have the solution for all the streams that we can manage in the country and in the region.
Thank you, Luis Diego and Sofia. Alejandro, from Catholic Relief Services, what's the vision that Catholic Relief Services has in terms of this cross-sectoral relationship we have been talking about, in terms of more of a ground last mile efforts? What does Catholic Relief Services are aiming in terms of carbon markets and experiences like the ones we just heard?
Okay, thank you. I'm Alejandro Martinez, and I'm the Director of Water Smart Agriculture for Catholic Relief Services in Latin America and in the Caribbean. And our work is principally, it is with small farmers, the most vulnerable, less than a hectare farmers mostly, in the dry corridor of Central America. From previous experience, I have experience in forest carbon projects and voluntary carbon markets, which have mechanisms and have been able to work and take credits to market and cash in on them. However, in dry corridor agriculture, we restore soil. We basically rebuild soils that are damaged and cannot produce anymore. 73% of our corridor is damaged and needs restoration. So we build the carbon content of the soil in small farms. However, we've done preliminary studies, and I agree with the colleague that was here before from Uruguay and the Ministry of Costa Rica. The mechanisms to produce any type of cash flow on small farmer, and especially dry corridor and basic grains productive systems, does not exist. The colleague from Paraguay made the interesting relationship between carbon and food security, and I think that's where we need to go. I think the previous colleagues in the panel collectively we're saying we don't have the mechanisms to go there yet. The banks are looking for it. They are working with medium and large size farmers, but also looking after the small farmers. I think the small farmers that we work with are the hardest ones to reach, the hardest ones to group together, and the hardest ones to develop these types of mechanisms for. That much said, we all work collectively to pull together alliances and partnerships that basically broker the deals that make these types of things happen. And if we want carbon to work for soil restoration, water management, and small farmer production, the partners, the banks, the scientists need to come together and broker this deal for carbon in small scale agriculture. To me, what that means is we have several challenges. One is the collective action of small farmers. How do we group them together? How do we quantify all the carbon that they are capturing? We really need to think above and beyond, for example, ownership of the land that they're on, because when we work in the dry corridor and we work across 5 countries, though, that's never going to match. We will not find private ownership in less than half of them. So we need to design a mechanism that can address poor small farmers that don't own their land. The production of carbon is pretty low. In a year, roughly a ton per hectare if we do well, if we don't have a climate event. It also has a plateau. We might be able to build it up 2-3 years, but after that the carbon stabilizes. So we need a system that perhaps is measured through carbon, but it's valued through food production. This has been done previously with carbon initiatives in forests, for example, where we value community livelihoods around the forest, adds value to the credit that's developed behind the ton. In small-scale agriculture, that needs to be done at a much higher multiplier, because 1 ton per hectare just doesn't produce the cash for a farmer for it to be attractive. So the value of any design needs to come from food security and measured through the accumulation of carbon. And once again, that's work to be done. It has not been done. We have done it in forest. We've done it in private markets. Some countries have had limited success in REDD+. Not even REDD+ has been a big winner. But I think it's essential that we try to do it with small farmers and soil restoration. So there's a lot of imagination ahead of us in developing these mechanisms and pulling together the partnerships.
Let me give the floor to Mariana Ramos. She's from the Agriculture and Livestock Conference of Brazil, also with a huge experience on the topic. So she will address to us on her experience also.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Sorry for my English. It's a work in progress. I'm going to read a text. It's an honor to represent the Brazilian agricultural sector and rural producers in this panel at COP29, especially highlighting Minas Gerais, a state of great importance to the country due to its agricultural production. Minas Gerais has 1 million farms registered in the federal database of the Rural Environmental Registry. This registry has identified that Minas Gerais preserves 33% of its native vegetation within farmers, demonstrating our producers' commitment in sustainability and environmental conservation. The Brazilian agriculture sector has been resilient and innovative, playing a crucial role in global food security and the fight against climate change. However, to scale up our sustainable practices, we need robust financial support in the line with the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. Beyond direct financing, we must explore other sources, such as private investments and carbon markets. The recognition of our sustainable and low-carbon agricultural practices through tropical methodologies and systems is essential to ensure the success of these financial mechanisms. And two, I need support to measure and qualify these benefits and to guarantee the fulfillment of sector commitment. Now, we'll present a video that demonstrates how partnerships can strengthen the sector, not only to mitigate and adapt to climate change, but also this generates benefits that foster economic, social, and environmental development, contribute to climate, energy, and food security, with biodiversity conservation. Thank you very much.
Boa tarde. É uma honra estar aqui no evento Minas Day durante a COP29 para apresentar o programa Agro More Green em inglês ou Agro Mais Verde em português. Essa iniciativa, implementada pela Federação da Agricultura e Pecuária do Estado de Minas Gerais, visa enfrentar os desafios das mudanças climáticas, promovendo a sustentabilidade e apoiando os produtores rurais em seus esforços para garantir a segurança alimentar e a resiliência climática. Criado para atender às necessidades ambientais e produtivas do setor agropecuário, o Agro Mais Verde apoia agricultores no cumprimento dos compromissos ambientais estabelecidos pela legislação de Minas Gerais e do Brasil. Nossa legislação ambiental é reconhecida mundialmente e o Agro Mais Verde ajuda os produtores a atingir esses padrões com excelência. O programa já beneficia inúmeros agricultores e inclui ações importantes, como restauração de cerca de 660 hectares de pastagens degradadas, recuperação de aproximadamente 600 hectares de áreas de preservação permanente e reservas legais degradadas, distribuição de toneladas de calcário e fertilizantes para revitalizar solos e otimizar a produção agrícola na região do Triângulo Mineiro. Essas ações contribuem para a restauração de ecossistemas, demonstrando o compromisso dos nossos agricultores participando da gestão ambiental e gerando aumento de produtividade e garantia de sustentabilidade agrícola, promovendo assim a segurança alimentar em Minas Gerais e no Brasil. A parceria com a Cargill exemplifica como o Agro Mais Verde une esforços de parceiros, possibilitando a instalação de cercas, o plantio de mudas nativas e a recuperação de pastagens degradadas. Essa diversificação produtiva fortalece a economia local e contribui para atender a demanda global, beneficiando diretamente os produtores rurais e o clima, ao mesmo tempo em que une e reforça a segurança alimentar. Estamos comprometidos em expandir o Agro Mais Verde para novas regiões de Minas Gerais, levando práticas sustentáveis e os benefícios do programa a mais agricultores e suas famílias. A COP29 representa um espaço crucial para a formação de parcerias que ampliem o financiamento climático, permitindo que o programa se torne uma referência global em práticas agrícolas e ambientais sustentáveis. O Agro Mais Verde reforça o compromisso da Federação da Agricultura e Pecuária do Estado de Minas Gerais em apoiar os agricultores na construção de um futuro agrícola sustentável. Nosso objetivo é inspirar iniciativas globais e estabelecer o Brasil como líder em práticas agropecuárias resilientes e sustentáveis. Agradeço pela atenção, convido a todos a se engajarem e espero que possamos estabelecer novas parcerias juntos para fortalecer a jornada rumo ao agronegócio mais próspero e sustentável.
Gracias. Obrigado, Mariana. Thank you, Mariana, very much. Just to go to our companies here, Sofia and Luis Diego. Can you broaden up a little bit on your experience now with your companies? What lessons have you drawn scaling up and diversifying the portfolio for the near future, right?
Yes, I mean, for us, is the availability for biomass very important. So to understand how much is available in which place, and be able to find a sweet spot between the capex as well as the yield that we are achieving. So to know actually how big should be the plant we are developing, so that the investment pays off and it makes sense. Another lesson that we have learned is that we need decentralized systems. We need plants everywhere where there is biomass waste. The more biomass waste we have, the more biochar we produce, the more carbon sequestration we have. Also, we need to have plants in all these places, because otherwise we need to transport the biomass from one place to the other, and more transportation means also more carbon dioxide emissions. In order to scale up, something we are doing is we are giving the biochar to the farmers under very low cost conditions. And this way, the farmers can learn very fast about the benefits, because in Latin America is not the market is just starting. So the faster they learn, the more they learn about it, and the easier we can scale up. Yeah.
We have a lot of lessons since the last 20 years that we have been reaching out about how can we help the country to develop a technology that can manage waste and reduce emissions from agriculture and other industries. But mostly the biggest lesson is that we don't have the right incentive to really do the change that we need in these kind of businesses to produce something sustainable in time. So what happened is that we have a lot of companies that comes and invest in the country and some other countries in the region, but that companies doesn't have directly influence in what is going to happen with the emissions and the waste management, and the policies of the countries are, at least at Costa Rica, are very strong, but not the compliance of that policies. So that is one of the biggest lessons. And the other one is that it's very difficult to access to grant money or some credits to do projects that have a big importance for the country and for the region. Why is that? Because you go for something different and some other kind of technologies, and you have to invest to do that. So what we have been doing for the last 20 years is doing organically and try to grow organically, because that access to that money is almost impossible in the country. So you can have initiatives, but that initiative is very hard to really get support from institutions and even from the government. So we have to do it organically, and the private sector cannot work alone in this. It have to be something that develops together with the public sector and institutions. That is the lessons that we have in the last 20 years, for sure. And I don't recall the other question. Okay.
Alejandro, do you want to add anything related with lessons learned out of your former experiences and what Catholic Relief Services have done in the field recently?
Yes, so I think the challenge is in the carbon market is laid out, right? I think the work needs to be done, but what I would like to talk about a little bit is step away from carbon and talk about partnerships and brokering the deal, making it happen, so we can also gain confidence that we can make it happen with carbon and small farmers. And as an example, I'd like to share an experience that CRS has recently been successful in pulling down in El Salvador behind debt reconfiguration, right? It's not carbon, but the interesting part of it is multi-sectoral partnership, brokering a deal to make something happen, right? A few important pieces for us as Catholic Relief Services is to make sure it reaches the farmer, the small, vulnerable farmers. In order to reach that, we need financial mechanisms that reach that level of investment, not necessarily well qualified for loans, but in the need of. We want scale, so we want the additive product to be big enough to impact a whole country or a whole region. So that you can't really do that a small loan at a time. You want a bigger package. In this instant, CRS collaborated with the government of El Salvador and FIAES, Fondo de Inversión Ambiental del Salvador. CAF, the bank, DFC, Development Finance Corporation, and JP Morgan to restructure $1 billion of painful debt in the country of El Salvador. So what happens in these type of initiatives? First of all, we go to El Salvador and we are addressing a national pain point, right? Unsustainable debt. It impacts the entire country, all sectors. And an alliance, we come to them and address that pain point. The financial partners come in, they restructure, they discount the debt, they recycle it, and are able to redirect over 30% of debt payments back into the country. You're paying your debt to your own country to finance restoration, of soil with small farmers, management of water in the most important river basin of El Salvador, El Río Lempa. So the lessons here is at scale. It's $1 billion. The big global players are the global and regional banks, JP Morgan, talking to El Salvador. And once they pull it down, they implement it inside of El Salvador with a national fund, right, that can reach the small producers. So it doesn't stay up in the stratosphere. The finance is paid from the government, debt repayments into FIAES, and that can go down to the small farmers for restoration and water management. The entire project has payments for 20 years, but it endows and capitalizes for perpetuity. So it's sustainable. And all of that machinery, all of that innovation goes into addressing restoration, food security, water management. It's invested in small farmers and in the public water sector and water management across the basin. So that's an example of what we collectively should be able to do around carbon. Answer the need of small farmers that are rebuilding their soils. They are capturing carbon. And today there's no way of recognizing that to them. In these structures, there's finance, there's insurance mechanisms, there's loans, a lot of financial security that answers the needs of the farmers. And I think that's what we need to do for our small farmers in the dry corridor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to open the floor to if there is any question to the panel. If somebody's interested. Yes, please.
Hi, Dan Christensen with PepsiCo. It's a question for the whole panel. I'm just curious how your organizations are thinking about measurement, monitoring, and verification, right? It's something that we're thinking a lot about at PepsiCo. And it's just a way of leading into it. You know, we have a huge supply chain globally, a network of roughly 300,000 farmers across the 35 different crops we source from 60 countries globally. We don't have all the answers, but when it comes to how we think about developing in-setting programs to incentivize farmers to make practice change, I think we feel like we have a pretty good approach, which is keep it simple, right? Make sure that there's a clear value proposition. And when it comes to how we think about verification, we also need to have external credibility, right? So when a company like PepsiCo says we've achieved X amount of carbon sequestration, we don't just make that up. We work with groups like SBTI, Greenhouse Gas Protocol, and so they're really kind of the validators of the work we do at the end of the day. Where we worry, right, is how do we get it right in terms of the balance in monitoring and verification? It's something that Dr. Law spoke to yesterday, right? So I'd be curious where your organizations fall on the spectrum, because I think we worry if we lean too hard into kind of accounting perfection and really rigid systems, they're going to be too complex, they're going to be too expensive for farmers to get to at the end of the day. And it's going to upset that balance that we have of really wanting to keep it simple and get farmers to buy in the first place.
So in our case, we are providing a service where we assure that we are complying with the standards that are needed for this. Different standards like Vera standard, for example. Yes, so our plants are going to be certified.
I will try to explain as better as I can, but normally in Costa Rica, and can be replicable in some other places, we have a lot of standards that we have to comply. So from the government to some other institutions, the idea is to provide that information, that data, to the customers and this kind of little farmers or big farmers. It will depend on what is the customer in this case. But for example, for a company like PepsiCo, probably in the supply chain, this is going to be a part of the reduction, emission reduction of the process, because it's not just waste management, it's energy production, and there is a lot of factors and indicators that KPIs that you can have from that whole stream of the process that you are going to set up, changing the waste management and the energy production, mostly for this kind of producers.
I'm sorry? No le oigo. Sorry, I can't hear. Sí, por favor. Okay, I'll try to take a stab at this. Okay, first, we work with small farmers, so I'll stick with this from small farmers. I think to reach scale, it has to be collective. It can't be 100 acres. It can't be 1,000 acres. It needs to be a country or a set of countries. I'll go back to the fact that this has not been done yet. The value and the credibility of the offset is really, in my opinion, dependent on who you work with, the certifiers, the Terra Carbons, the Windrocks, the companies, the experience, the names that you put behind it give you the credibility of the offset and of the design. So that type of partnership matters. It also, if I can refer or take a bold comment towards the involvement of private business. In my forest experience, we had a board of directors that was formed by U.S. utility companies. And they accompanied the process. They accompanied the design of the deal. They paid for the setup, and then they compensated with a turnaround benefit from the sale. So in that sense, the private business was intimately involved in the design, in the selection of the partners, the certifiers, the specialists. They accompanied the process that lasted a year and a half or two, and they measured the risk in small chunks rather than an unknown package for you to purchase from. So the credibility of institutions involved behind it, the potential of private businesses accompanying the process by either being on a board or being partners in, I think is very interesting. And it stays, it remains that the structure, the design is still to be done. I think it's not there yet.
Let me just help Mariana here for the translation so she can provide you an answer in terms of the certification. Basically, they go through Cargill. That's what she's telling me, through a methodology that it's called Eco Soluciones Ambientales. Such a way, then they can provide farmers with with the real verification process. It's through Cargill, right? Cargill.
Isso. Verifica tanto na área produtiva, na recuperação das pastagens, quanto na parte de floresta nativa.
Yeah, they verify with the farmers as well as the productive areas,
Áreas nativas,
yeah, and the native areas being preserved by the farmers. Mhm. Mhm. E o direito, o right for payment is to the farmers, right? Through the Cargill. Okay. Thank you very much. I would like to have this foreclosure, but first I would like to invite Dr. Ratam Lal from the Ohio State University. So please.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you and thank ICA. This is the kind of discussion which is, thank you. This is the kind of discussion which is really most welcomed and appreciated. I want to begin by stating you said 1 ton of carbon per hectare, small farmer, what can they get out of it? I was doing calculation while you were talking about it. 1 ton of carbon per hectare is a very good rate. I have seen rates of 100 kilogram per hectare to 1500 kilogram per hectare. So 1 ton, 1000 kilogram is a good rate. That translates into 3.7 credit. 1 ton multiplied 44 divided by 12 is 3.7 credit. If you pay farmer $50 per credit, that's $185. Even for a small farmer, if they have 4 hectares, 185 times 4 is $700, $800. It's not a small amount. For a small farmer, it's a good amount. That brings me to the question of when we talk about carbon, what carbon are we talking about? We heard today charcoal carbon, we heard today soil carbon, we heard today forest carbon. In fact, there are 7 types of carbon. So farmer have a potential to grow carbon or farm carbon, 7 different types of carbon. Number 1, we have atmospheric carbon. That's a gray carbon. Number 2, we have carbon in plants. That's a green carbon. Number 3, we have carbon in fossil fuel, which is causing a problem. That's red carbon. Number 4, we have inorganic carbon that precipitates in the ground and become calcium carbonate. And in this seminar for last 3 days, nobody has yet talked about it. That's called white carbon. Okay. Then we have blue carbon, and blue carbon is lakes, coastal areas, wetlands. That's a very large reservoir of carbon, and it's called blue carbon. And then we have, of course, black carbon, charcoal carbon, the biochar, the pyrolysis process. So there are 7 types of carbon. Now, farmer, those who are entrepreneur, they really could grow those carbon, and we are modeling the rates. But I think what you said was very important. Keep it simple. If you complicate it, farmer doesn't get it. It's intermediary who get it. And out of $385 that I said, 1 ton of carbon, farmer should get at least 80% of it. I can understand 20% going to people who are aggregator and verifier and another, but it's not they get 80% and farmer get 20%. That we shouldn't do. So very simple process of whichever carbon they are being monitored by aerial photograph, satellite imagery, ground truthing at 1 or 2 places, but not a detailed sampling. That to me is putting a monkey wrench into the system where it does not really provide anything. Now, a couple of other things which are very important to say, how long is the carbon going to stay in the ground? That's a very important part. Once you put the carbon in the soil, how long? And I want to give you an example. Let's take Ohio State University. Ohio State University has 60,000 students. And if we graduate them 12,000 per year, the average time the students stay at Ohio State is 60,000 divided by 12,000, 5 years. So mean residence time of carbon is calculated the same way. Total pool divided by flux. So whatever you do, calculate the time that the carbon, if the farmer is selling carbon but it's not going to stay there, it has no value. So always link it up to the mean residence time of carbon in the soil. The other part I want to mention is some legal part, rights of soil. When people have a rights of soil, soil is a living thing. ICA has a program called like some Living Soils of America. Soil is a living entity. So like any other living entity, soil should also have rights. Rights to be protected, rights to secure, rights to make sure it's flourish, rights to make sure it's producing thing what it's supposed to produce. So we got to have legal part rights of soil, living entity. And that brings me to the final part of this whole dilemma, how to make it functional carbon farming, Soil Health Act. At a national level, at a district level, at a state level, at a continental level, and a global level, we have to have a Soil Health Act, which does not mean punish anybody. It simply means those people who do a good management, they are rewarded. Those who do not do good management, leave them alone. Eventually they will say, yes, somebody is being rewarded, why don't I do it? I think that's the way to proceed. So 1 ton per hectare, if I could get that carbon sequestration and monitor simple process, remote sensing, satellite imagery, ground truthing once in a while, modeling, keep that part 20%, 80% must go to the farmer. If we try to reverse it the other way around, that the arbitrator and the companies in between get 80% and farmer get 20%, it will fail. And that is what I would strongly recommend. Keep it simple, keep it farmer oriented so the farmers benefit, and make sure that the soil is protected by a Soil Health Act and the mean residence time of carbon in the soil is evaluated. If you cannot certify that the carbon which got into the soil will stay there for 10 years, less than 10 years, it does not have value. And this is where the legal part comes in very, very critical. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ratanlal, and this gives us to the end of this session. We thank you very much. We know this is always a very competing space, and having you here for this a bit of an hour, it's a pleasure for us. Thank you very much, and enjoy your afternoon. Thank you.